let's put this Tony Romo stuff to bed, okay?
Yeah.
The man's had 3 back surgeries. He's got a collarbone that's been broken twice. He's 36 years old. He plays behind, the last couple of years, he played behind probably the best offensive line in football. Hasn't finished the season in the last 5. Any general manager that would make a deal for Tony Romo shouldn't keep their job as a general manager. I mean, it's a bad business decision.
That was Joe Theismann telling Bleacher Report that any GM who trades for Tony Romo should be fired, calling it a bad business decision. Max? Is Theismann right?
Not only is he right, I have very little to add. It's not that Tony Romo isn't excellent, Will. I know he's an excellent quarterback, Stephen A. You underestimate him. He is an excellent quarterback when he's on the field.
In the regular season.
But his recent medical history indicates that he will never be on the field for an entire season. He won't make it through. He's actually best served as the backup on the Dallas Cowboys. He's best served as a guy on the bench who, if the starter is hurt, can come in and give you elite-level quarterback play for a couple of games because he has chronic back conditions, plural. That means he will never make it through a season, so you can't game plan a season around him, and you can't chew up a big chunk of your salary cap on him. Theismann's 100% right.
What does chronic mean?
Over and over again over time.
Over and over again?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing happening over and over again?
Yeah.
And you generalized his back as one condition. His back.
Conditions.
The spine.
I said
going
plural.
from here to here,
Yes.
that's one thing.
The spine bones.
A lot of people don't know this.
But
I'm going to tell you where it's going because a lot of people don't know this, but during the commercial break, Max was placing himself among the intellectual elites of the country, I believe. And I can't believe you would then go on the minute the cameras come on and align yourself with some of the most moronic comments I've heard in football the last year or so.
You actually placed me there unknowingly, but go ahead.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous by Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann was a great NFL quarterback. He has not proven to be a great GM, and he sure hasn't proven to be a medical doctor, nor has the intellectual Max Kellerman proven to be a medical doctor. Tony Romo has had the following injuries: pinky, collarbone, ruptured disc, transverse process. Yeah, in the back region, but different, right?
Oh, I see.
I mean,
because the backbone is not connected to the backbone,
a literally
right?
different
Or the
part of your
thigh
back.
bone.
Yeah.
Collarbone, and compression factor.
Yeah.
Those are not the same injuries. They're not recurring injuries like saying a degenerative knee or an ACL that keeps tearing. These are individual freak accidents. Now, is Tony...
Oh, come on, Will.
You can't say that with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face.
You don't even mean it.
I have never come on this show.
You don't even mean it. This is the first time for everything. This is your first time. You don't mean it.
And Will, I will say that statement certainly doesn't place you among the intellectual elites.
I mean it. I mean it. I would never come on this show. I have enough respect for not only this show, but the concept of debate to hold an opinion that I only think and feel.
I understand. I understand. Go ahead.
These injuries are not connected. These are not chronic.
Except by the back.
You laugh and it makes me laugh. That's why I'm smiling.
The backbone's connected to. Go ahead, Will. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Tony Romo statistically has been one of the most dominant quarterbacks. Quit laughing, Max. You're making it seem like I don't mean
By
this.
dominant, you mean injury-prone quarterback?
I mean a top 5 quarterback over the last decade. Most fourth quarter comebacks. Highest passer rating above active quarterbacks. The Denver Broncos, or if you want to go into the non-contender status, Chicago Bears or New York Jets would be very well off to trade for Tony Romo. There's a price to everything. And just because he's been hurt, I think it's only 3 of the last 4 seasons, doesn't mean he's
not a bad
Please put the camera on Will and say that again.
Max.
Wait, please put it on Will and just repeat that phrase. What was it? He's just because he's been hurt. What? How many times?
I'm going to rest my argument here. I will not be going to Max Kellerman or Joe Theismann for medical opinions on chronic things or what you call damaged goods. I will instead stick with Tony Romo.
First of all, nobody's accusing Joe Theismann of being a doctor, but he is a Super Bowl champion quarterback from the NFC East, which is something Tony Romo has never been, and we now know officially he will never be. And that's the reality of the situation. See, Will, where Max got lost in this argument, but I have not, is that the last time I saw you, we were talking about how Tony Romo was going to be inserted as the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and how Tony Romo was going to lead them to the promised land, and how Jerry Jones was going to see to it, and how Dak Prescott...
So you're not going to talk about Theismann? You're going to talk about me?
No. That's what I'm talking about here. I'll let you speak. This is what we were talking about. And so what has happened is you're in quite a quandary here. Because on one hand, you love your Dallas Cowboys, and you love what you're seeing Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and the crew do. On the other hand, the more they do it, the more it ensures your prognostication, how inept, how out there, how lost you were when it came to Tony Romo. So I understand. It's a troubling situation. You can think about it and come back next week and recover.
No, I'm here. I'm ready.
You're in no position to do it right now. Here's the deal. Tony Romo, for all the greatness that you talk about with him, that's regular season, 78-49 record, completing 65% of his passes. The brother's big time during the regular season. Come postseason, he has 2 playoff victories in 10 years. Will Kane, I know you know this. In order to win 1 Super Bowl, you actually have to win a minimum of 3 postseason games in the same season. This man hasn't won more than 2 in 10 years. It is over. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is this, Will. You can make all the arguments that you want, but Joe Theismann, he ain't a doctor, but he is a quarterback. He did play in the NFC East. He has won a Super Bowl, and more importantly, he's had personal conversations with Tony Romo where he has suggested to Tony Romo that you should retire because of how risky it is. I've interviewed Joe Theismann. I know Joe Theismann. I've spoken to him on many occasions about this. This is not something that Tony Romo is reading about or hearing about on the news. He has looked Tony Romo in the face, and he has said, in the interest of you and your family, these injuries are no joke. And so in that regard, I will only answer it by saying this. Should somebody take Tony Romo? Hell no. Unless you could get him on the cheap so when he gets hurt, it doesn't affect you financially.
Put him on the bench.
That's it.
All right. Number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1. I don't need a week to form a rebuttal for you. I need 2 seconds. It happens live.
I know you think
as
that.
we're speaking. There's no week needed. I'm ready now.
Intellectual elite in the country.
I know you think that.
Number
There we
1.
go.
That's number 1. Number 2, you haven't peeled back the curtain. You haven't showed anybody the predicament that I'm in that I've got to now argue my way out of with my Tony Romo opinion.
I actually think you did a good job on Mike, and I watched you, and at no time did you address your faux pas when it came to Tony Romo. You, as a matter of fact, avoided that subject religiously, if I recall correctly. Max, I just want you to know, he avoided the subject.
Which number 3 I will address now. I was not wrong.
Go ahead.
I was not wrong.
So you on the air for 4 hours, you ain't have time to address it then, but you here for a few minutes. You got time.
I say my good stuff for you.
Take your time.
I say my good stuff for you.
Go ahead.
Well, let me.
No. I'm going to put on the spotlight. I'm going to dance around in the spotlight.
You've been dancing out this morning.
I'm not trying to get in the darkness. I'm going to dance in the spotlight. Here it is. Tony Romo, I still predict, will play a pivotal role for the Dallas Cowboys before the season is over. Either injury or bad play will force Tony Romo onto the field. Dak Prescott is great. I'm so excited about Dak Prescott to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys for the next decade. He is playing at a level it's hard to imagine anyone else could play better. But I still know that rookie has never won the Super Bowl, and I still know that Tony Romo could be hitting Des Bryant on some of these routes he's burned Josh Norman on down the field. I think Tony Romo could be operating behind this offensive line on this team at a very, very high level.
I got a question.
And he will this season.
I got a question. Am I to understand when you made the statement that no rookie quarterback has ever won a Super Bowl, you believe, even right now, that the return of Tony Romo would elevate the Cowboys' chances of winning a Super Bowl rather than leaving Dak Scott in the lineup?
I think it's 6 one way, half a dozen another.
Oh, Lord, what kind of damn answer is that? What's your answer?
I think the Dallas Cowboys can win the Super Bowl with Dak Prescott or Tony Romo.
So then what you sweating about Tony Romo for then? So what you sweating about Tony Romo for then? Why do you feel this compulsion? Why do you feel this need to get Tony Romo back in the lineup if Dak Prescott can win with it?
You're sweating a little bit.
You are sweating. You know this? We saw the makeup artists come over here and touch up a little bit. You're sweating a little bit. What's going on? I mean, Dak Prescott, you don't think... Can Dak Prescott win with the Cowboys?
Yes.
The Super Bowl?
Keep going. Second question is...
So why are you worried? Why do you feel the need for Tony Romo? Because I believe Tony Romo...
I didn't say I do.
As a matter of fact, I'm counting that I hope your prediction is correct. Because to me, if Tony Romo gets back in the lineup, it ensures the Cowboys will win the Super Bowl. I hope it happens.
This is what I want to know. Hold on. This is what I want to know. Why do you need to be a doctor to know that if a guy misses 3 of the last 4 seasons, he's injury prone? It's like,
they're
did you need a doctor?
Injuries, Max. Don't you know they're not connected?
Did you need a doctor to tell you that Cal Ripken Jr. was a healthy guy?
Bad morning.
Did you need a doctor for that?
If that's true, I'm completely lacking self-awareness because I feel pretty good about this.
Real good. Good. Let's leave it on that note. This was fun, Will. Always good to see you.
I think I'm pretty self-aware, Molly.
You are.
Not
but
this
a
morning.
little lost right now.
Not this morning. Little lost. Bad morning for you.
Have you ever admitted defeat? Ever?
Say what?
Ever? Have you ever admitted defeat?
I've never had
He's
to.
lost.
I've never had to. It's just so obvious that it doesn't need to be said on this show.
It doesn't happen. That's why.
I rest my case.
He believes it. No awareness. Meanwhile, Josh Norman and Dez Bryant got into it both on and off the field as the Cowboys hosted the Redskins on Thanksgiving. And the trash talk, well, it continued post-game.
This guy bumping to me like, what's up? Where I'm from, we unload the clip, so pretty much whatever you want to do. Not that guy that see a challenge from the face and back down. That's not me. That's not what you're going to get. So I'm sorry if I offended anybody. Well, actually, I'm not sorry I offended anybody because I'm be me. That's who I am. Grass it to the end. Like I said, I'm loading the clip all the way out to the end of the game. Don't matter what.
All right, he went beyond say sorry, not sorry, and then this. That was Thursday. Josh Norman confirming Dez Bryant's quote twice, and then fast forward to Monday, where he's retracting those comments and telling the Washington Post that Bryant didn't actually say that. Dez also expressed regret on Twitter for how he handled things. Will Kane in the house. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good.
What's up, man?
Trash talk, Dallas Cowboys. You might as well call them my name.
Yeah, Mr. Cowboy.
But by the way, we've been
flesh.
on the Cowboys bandwagon for weeks now. I don't know where you've been.
I noticed that they've gone 10-1 and I haven't been here. I think the last time you invited me, they were 5-1. And I can't help but think
Details.
Coincidence?
Yeah.
I
That's
will
right.
confess, it's hard to look at you right now.
I know.
With the Cowboys being 10-1. I'll
That's
admit
not the
it.
only reason it's hard.
I'll admit it. I mean, what would be the other reason?
Just jealousy. The jealousy you feel.
Stephen
With
A.
that shirt?
The jealousy
Okay.
you feel.
Speaking of hard to look at things, is it hard to look at Josh Norman right now? How does this make him look?
It's hard. It makes him look bad. And I don't say that with any pleasure because I've gotten to know Josh, and I think Josh is a good dude. He's got what I consider to be an appropriate chip on his shoulder, considering how he's climbed that ladder to success, being on a practice squad and working his way up. But what he said was inexcusable because, again, as I pointed out on Friday, Max, when they were talking smack to each other, and I mentioned this, Will, as well, in this day and age with the violence that we're seeing all over the place, whether it's in the streets of Chicago to the University of Ohio State, you don't sit up there and go out with that kind of verbiage and, talking about, emptying the clip and all of that stuff. And he said that Dez Bryant said that. And when asked by the reporters, he said twice, Dez had said that. And then to retract it and has come back and say that Dez did not say that. Well, you got to also take into account Dez's history. Dez has been a model citizen pretty much for the last several years. But when he first came into the league, he was having some issues with his image. And so, saying something like this sort of provokes people to think about Dez in that light. Had Dez indeed said something like that, you start raising an eyebrow and you're thinking about him negatively. And why? Because y'all talking smack on the field. You're going to use that kind of analogy. That was my only issue. So I'm just going to sit up there and say it's unfortunate that he did that. It's unfortunate that he confessed that Dez didn't say something like that, because even if Dez had said it, it was something I felt he should have never revealed publicly to the media to begin with. But especially now that we know he did say it, why'd you do that?
I have a different take than that. I understand that take.
Sure.
And at first, Josh, why'd you say empty the clip? But if Josh Norman is speaking extemporaneously, just revealing the gist of what was said, and he uses a euphemism for leaving it all out on the field, and it's an inappropriate one given our day and age.
Sure.
And then when people say, did he say that? And he doubled down, then he made a mistake, right? But when it came out and they asked Dez, he goes, no, I never said that. And it came back to Josh Norman. He stepped up and owned it and finally acted like an adult. At a certain point, you just got to say, okay, fine. I did it. My bad. What I want to focus on, so I'm not going to rake him over the coals for it.
I'm not raking him over the coals. I just said he looks bad.
And the reason and he could look a lot worse, but Dez Bryant is not making him look worse. I don't know if you'll like this or not as a Cowboys fan.
He's not.
I have so much admiration for Dez, the way he comports himself publicly. I know he's missed meetings and this and that, and he shows up late, and there's a problem sometimes, but the way he talks publicly when he addresses issues like this, given his background, the kind of teammate he is, he doesn't want to be a distraction. He doesn't even kill Josh Norman about it. He says, look, I don't have anything against the guy. I'm sure he doesn't have anything against me. It's over. He didn't kill him about it. Dez took a couple days of bad publicity, a couple news cycles, including on this show. If Dez Bryant said that, that's bad. And he doesn't look to get some grand apology or to really make Josh Norman pay. He lets him off the hook. puts it behind him, isn't a distraction to his team. And once again, in terms of what he says and how he addresses issues like this, I find Des Bryant's behavior to be exemplary in these kind of instances, and I have a lot of admiration for that guy.
All right, I'm going to go with both of you guys here. First of all, when it comes to Josh Norman, I do want to rake him over the coals on something, and I do want to defend him on something. First of all, I'm very well aware of the statistics in this country on crime rates, gun crime, specifically in the black community, in specifically places like Chicago as well. So I'm sensitive to that.
Right.
But I also don't think we have to look at somebody saying unload the clip and think A, he's contributing, or B, he's insensitive to all these facts. Gun euphemisms are part of our culture. We talk about guys being sharpshooters, dead-eye. We talk on this show about blowing a hole in somebody's argument. It's constant. And it's not bad. It's not negative. It's just part of what... I think in no way does that kind of language contribute to actual violence. Words like that do not lead us to actual violence. We can separate the two. And Josh using that kind of language, unload the clip, the media started hyperventilating about that entirely too quick.
I'll respond to that in a second. Go ahead.
Then to rake Josh over the coals, though, he played into that. He saw it almost immediately. Because when you hear that clip, I think it's pretty clear he was talking about himself. He said it twice, and the second time it was very clear he was talking about himself unloading the clip, not Des Bryant. So what he did, and this is the worst part, is then he lied. He just flat out lied, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Because the Washington Post reporter asked him to clarify. Did Des say that? Did Des say that? And twice he said, yeah, Des said that. That's a flat out lie. One, Des called him out on. And look, Josh has proven to be a provocateur, an instigator on and off the field. He twisted Dez's leg during that game. He stepped on Dez's hand during that game. He was trying to provoke Des. And this is another example of that. And lying, in my mind, is just way, way over the line. Don't start making stuff up. Des clearly thought that as well.
My response to that is this. I appreciate your perspective. I hear where you're coming from. And I don't want to debate this part because I think it would be unfair to you guys to debate it per se. But as an African American, and a lot of African Americans get upset at me for bringing this up, the reality is clear. Regardless, I'm not questioning Josh Norman's intent. I'm quite sure that, he's not a public speaker, or he's a football player. And we got to understand that. And he's speaking extemporaneously off the fly in the immediate aftermath of a game. We get all of that. But the reality is that when you walk out in the street, we talk about people being role models. Why do we say that? Because of the impact individuals, particularly professional athletes, have on young minds. So it's not about what you and I know to be true in terms of what you just said and what he meant and how it was interpreted. It's about how other folks out there might interpret it, what it's perceived in terms of what kind of impact it's perceived as having. And I think when you talk about the African American community, we have to be sensitive to what potentially impacts us from a detrimental perspective. On many occasions, I look at you, Max, and I talk about the numbers game. And I sit there and I remind people all the time, we make up 13% of the American population. The Latino community is 17% of the population. We're no longer even a dominant minority. When you talk about the incarceration rate, when you talk about the death rate and all of these different things, we attribute these things to a potpourri of circumstances. Those things can't be ignored. And so when you are out there communicating and conducting yourself in a certain way, there's an elevated level of sensitivity that somebody in my position, and in Josh Norman's position, and in Des positions, and others, that we have to harbor because of how things directly affect our community.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm doing.
In terms of sensitivity, I think people are way too sensitive about language.
I agree.
Generally,
I agree, but it's reality.
And I don't think these kind of words lead directly in a causal way to behavior, but they may have some kind of marginal impact on societal norms, right? If someone says unload the clip, and it kind of promotes this idea that guns are normal and this kind of behavior is normal in a very marginal kind of way that's very hard to measure. I basically agree with you, Will. It shouldn't be, should not start hyperventilating about it. But I also don't think Josh Norman lied quite. I think that was euphemistic language, as you're referring to. Look, we use this kind of language all the time. And then I think at a certain point, if I had to guess, he realized, oh, wait, are people hanging on to this language? Wait, who said that? And he was saying, the way I interpret it,
now comes the lie.
Maybe if you want to call this lie, he was saying that's the sentiment that Des Bryant expressed to me.
So
and then when it became an issue on shows like this and other media outlets, and Des was like, time out, I never said anything about guns. At that point, Norman had to step forward and clear it up.
You know, it's going to come off as I'm a fan, but I just want to agree with one thing you said. Man, it is hard not to like the way Des comports himself. He seems to be real, and real's not good enough. You know, you better be really good if you're going to be real. But he's thinking out loud. You watch that interview he does with Ed Werder, and he's thinking out loud. He's like, I can't, and he's emotional. He's like, I can't move on. I want to stay on this for a second because Josh said X, Y, Z. And then Des did respond. But when he kind of calms down, he generally chooses the right path. And it's not the perception of Des. There's a perception of Des out there right now that I don't know that aligns with who he really is. And by the way, I'll give Josh some of the same credit. Josh was being emotional. Josh was letting it out.
That's what I said.
My only critique of Josh
not
is
acting,
not telling the truth.
But then he owned it. Eventually, he stepped up and owned it.
That's good. You're right.
Including for people like you saying he lied. He's like, okay, this is on me. And I 100% that Des, his reputation from his point of view must be obnoxious because it is the opposite of who he shows himself to be, at least publicly.
My closing point is this. Neither of them are bad guys.
No.
That's not why we're having this debate. What we're discussing is the impact of their words and their actions.
Yep.
That means who you affect, not who you are. Josh Norman's a good dude. Des Bryant has proven to be a very good dude. Both of them are elite athletes in the ultimate level of the NFL. It's about the impact of the lives they potentially touch. That's why professional athletics is what it is today. It's not because of just you. It's because of the lives you touch. That's all I'm saying.
And Stephen A., to that point, clearly they thought they were in the wrong, and that's why they decided to squash it publicly, and it's done.